Hello, welcome to Adventures in Angular, the podcast where we keep you updated on all things Angular related. This show is produced by two companies, Top End Devs and Envoy. Top End Devs is where we create top end devs who get top end pay and recognition while working on interesting problems and making meaningful community contributions. And Envoy, which provides remote design and software development services on a task basis. So clients only pay after tasks are delivered and approved. In today's episode, we will talk about a company called Tiny and some of the tools that this company provides for us, web developers. My name is Lucas Paganini, your host in the podcast, and joining me in today's episode is a very special guest, Mrina Sugosh. So, Mrina, let me give you a little bit of intro, and then I'm just gonna pass on the ball to you. So, Mrina is a developer relations manager with more than 4 years of experience with full stack development, cloud, and AI products. She's been hacking away tech products since the age of 14, much earlier than myself. And after 5 years of writing software and evangelizing products at IBM and DigitalOcean, she has turned to her passion to educate developers and become a developer advocate as a developer relations manager at Tiny. So, Mrina, very happy to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Lucas. That was a very sweet introduction from you. And I'm really excited to be here and talk to you today.
Yes. It's easy to introduce people that have great accomplishments. So, thanks for making it easy. Marina, let's just take it from here. So, can you introduce us, just give a pitch of what is Tiny? Like, we know that it's a company, but which products does Tiny have that we as developers should know about? Like, why should we care?
Right. So Tiny is a JavaScript-based rich text editor component that can embed right into your web applications. So imagine you are actually writing a description on Shopify today. You actually are using TinyMCE to write that description. If you have ever typed any sort of rich text on the web, you most likely have used TinyMCE. It's like trusted by several enterprises like IBM, Microsoft, Salesforce, as well as some of the things you touch day to day, like Shopify, MailChimp, and so many more products, right? So it is simply a JavaScript based rich text editor component, but it is really important for developers because it provides more than just bold, italics, and underline, which is what we think of when we think of rich text editor. It provides features like markdown support, AI assistant. We're actually, 7.2, 7.1 is coming up, and we have some more support for our AI assistant. So, kind of teasing that over here in this podcast as well. So, several great features to really enable your users at the end of the day who are creating rich text or who are creating some sort of content to have kind of a seamless experience as they're creating a content, as well as a smart experience if they want to use AI.
Awesome. Okay. So it seems to me that this is the most, or at least one of the most supercharged rich text editors on the market today. So is that basically what you're saying?
I would say so. In terms of it's not just feature rich, right? It's feature rich, but it's
Mhm.
also ready to scale for you. So TinyMCE can be something as simple as running a few features. You can customize it very quickly, or something as complex as having document converters, revision history, all kind of built into the editor. So you can use TinyMCE for a blog post in your web application to type up a blog post, or you can also use TinyMCE in invoice processing where you need to edit some invoices, comment, and collaborate with other team members. So it can be as complicated and as simple of a rich text editor as you want, and it scales.
Interesting. Okay, so you brought up some more complex use cases that I hadn't thought up at the beginning, because at first I
Mhm.
only thought about something that could export Markdown, or just export it as HTML and support Markdown as input. But this is a lot more complex than that, because as soon as you mentioned like invoices, I even thought about like an email editor that like for email marketing that is not just regular text, but something a little bit more complicated. So what I wanted to know is, what are the most relevant use cases for Tiny that come to your mind and that people generally use it for? Because perhaps people are not thinking about the possibilities of where to use that.
Right. So if you think about a rich text editor, I think the first thought that you get is like in content management systems, right? Where you have the ability to maybe create a template, have the bold italics underline, have the ability to paste in some media, spell check your solution, things like that. But as you said, you can actually extend TinyMCE to a bunch of different use cases like email and messaging platform, right? There are out of the box templates that you can actually go to the Tiny site and see the email and I believe uh, messaging template or solution that, and you can actually see how an advanced template can actually fit right into your editor and how you can edit that for email marketing software. It can also be used for document management systems, CRMs, right? Uh, TinyMCE is a great way to use it for a CRM. But for example, if you want an email template where you're like, hey, this is my lead, this is what my project is worth, you can actually create email templates off of there as well. So there's a lot of different use cases ranging from CMSs, LMSs, your internal applications, as I mentioned, like the IBMs and Microsofts are using them internally. And then you can also extend it to email messaging and CRMs and DMSs and so on and so forth. So it's a great tool that ranges from a wide range of solution. It's simply like if you have a use case for rich text, or if you have a use case to collaborate over a piece of document, collaborate over text, and you want to build that functionality into your web application, Tiny is a great place to start.
Okay, gotcha. And we were referencing the Tiny website. For anyone that is just listening to the show and wants to check that out, is tiny.cloud. So just
Mhm.
type that out in your browser and you'll be able to see demos of the product and some examples of solutions and use cases for it. So Mrina, let me make the question that a lot of folks may be thinking at this moment. There are so many open source libraries out there. There's just so many things that we can get for free and even customize them. They're MIT, so we can just even bundle in our code base if we want to make changes to the source code. So which audience do you think would benefit more from Tiny, and which audience do you think would not be the ideal customer for Tiny and would be better served by looking for an open source library that they can just install and hack it away?
Right. That's a great question. And that's something we've probably kind of dabbled with even internally at TinyMCE. And the simple solution can be, if you are working on any kind of project, right, that's beyond just a hobby project. If you're working on a front facing application, it's a small side project that you can see scaling and growing. If you're going to scale your application, then I think TinyMCE is the way to go. And I'm not just saying that because I work for TinyMCE. I've worked with other editors in the market. And as you mentioned, that could be MIT licensed and things like that. And the thing about that is maintaining a rich text editor is hard, right? We have over 50, 60 engineers working on this. And it's because of the complexity that comes with dealing with text on a website. It's pretty complicated. If you've ever worked with DOM manipulations, you know how complicated it is. And that's kind of the reason why I think Tiny is great for these kind of applications that need to scale, because a rich text editor is not where you want to be spending, especially if you're a small team of engineers, most of your time developing. You want to be able to plug this application in, make it look and feel the way you want it, and then move on to the next thing, right? So if you're a small team of engineers, highly recommend. If you're an enterprise, or as SMB or medium-sized business, again, it's the same sort of solution. Do you really want to be spending a lot of time developing and wrapping your own rich text editor, or do you want to kind of move on to the next big thing in your project and adapt something that's already tried and tested? Tiny has over 20 years of experience in the industry. We've a lot of developers, over 1 million developers at this point, have grown with Tiny in these past 20 years. And they've seen us transition, evolve, and adapt to the quality and standard of web development as the decades have progressed. So we have 20 years of experience coming in, but more than the 20 years, it's just we've been stable, we are consistent, and we've proven to be able to scale to the needs of our customers. And I think that's really what sets Tiny apart from, just picking up a rich text editor. Because the other thing is you don't want your users in your web application to come in, start typing a piece of text, and then it gets buggy. Imagine if someone's trying to create a blog post on your website or a content management system. They drag and drop a image, and then the image starts creating all the text super buggy. That's not the experience you want for your developers as well, or for your users as well. So from a developer experience, it's great because it's very quick and easy to set up. You can get most of the basic functionality, in my opinion, up and running within 5 to 10 minutes if you're an experienced developer, or even if you're an intermediate developer. And on top of that, I really believe that from a user experience point of view, we are a lot less buggy than a lot of open source solutions out there.
Gotcha. Understood. So it all boils down to how much quality you're looking for in the shortest amount of time possible. Because at the same time, let's be honest, if anyone really wanted to spend enough time and resources, they could get an alternative version, quote unquote free, because it's not really free if you have to spend a lot of your time to make it as good as what Tiny already offers out of the box. So at the end of the day, if you consider that you're still going to have to spend your time, which might be even more expensive than just the commercial license for Tiny, then at the end of the day, it all boils down to the same amount of financial resources invested. But at one side, you get a component that is ready to go from the start. And on the other hand, you take a lot more time to get it up and running.
Yeah, it really is that. And it's also technical debt, right? I've worked for software engineering teams, and one of the, I think, things that you need to keep in mind whenever you're introducing a new feature or product within your major project is how much technical debt is that going to introduce for us long term, right? The fact that Tiny is maintained by 50, 60 plus engineers, they're going to take care of all the bugs, especially, if you're a commercial license customer, you're going to have the extra one-on-one support. So I think that is another major consideration as you are thinking about, a rich text editor for a business, because it's not only upfront engineering cost, it's also technical debt, maintenance of the component. So there's so many different aspects when you think about a software engineering project, especially a full stack project. And I think it's kind of just determining how much time and money and resources you want to allocate to a rich text editor component.
Awesome. Now let's talk about it a bit more from a developer standpoint, because I think it's really interesting to understand how much work it goes into building that sort of stuff. And it's kind of I think almost all front-end developers at this point, they know that building a calendar is very complicated. So it's something that any normal person that isn't a developer would just browse the web and see a date picker and think, oh, okay, cool. That's a date picker.
Yeah, you can
whatever.
build it.
Yeah, whatever, sure. But any front-end developer that has ever tried to create it realize how complex it is to make it accessible, to make it performant, and also to make it localized, right? Because it's one thing to just have a component that works in English, and it's another thing entirely to have something that works for all languages that exist in the world. So that's like a complete different challenge, right? And you mentioned that Tiny has like 40, 50 engineers. So I'm not sure what is the exact number, but I'm really curious to understand the challenges that come in the background to make such a component happen. Like, what is the amount of people that are working behind, and why are all those resources necessary to build a rich text editor?
Right. No, that is a great question, right? I So let me start by breaking down the questions. We have about 50 developers working on TinyMCE. As you mentioned, there are different parts of a rich text editor that goes into building something as cool and feature rich and supported as TinyMCE. Um, I think the first thing is the web de- the web world, right? The world of web development is constantly upgrading and changing. We have a new framework every few months, a new update every few months, and a lot of improvements and updates from React to Angular to Vue to the way we build things with Vite. It used to be I used to bundle things and build things with things called like Babel and things like that, and now it's all like Vite and ES Build, which are a zillion times faster. So just having people first understand what is new and what is important in the web development world, that takes a lot of effort. Now, the second part is keeping all of the features up to date, right? When we talk about TinyMCE features, you can uh, think about it in a few different aspects. You first have core editing features, right? Like font formatting, code editor, text pattern, import CSS, character map, things like that. Even like the cute like emoticons, right? All of that requires someone to maintain it, come up with a feature, determine how that icon is going to look, how is it going to work on the back end. How do we make sure that introducing this feature is not going to take away from the performance of the component itself? Then there comes a little bit more complicated feature, right? Beyond a core editor, as I was talking about collaboration, right? If you want revision history, if you want comments on your application or mentions, if you want in-app conversations and discussions in your web application using a rich text editor, that takes a little bit more effort because now it's not only you typing a piece of text, it's you collaborating with someone else live. It's not necessarily real-time collaboration yet, and the keyword is yet, but it is a very asynchronous collaboration that's happening. And you need to make sure that the person who's opening a new session of your website is receiving those comments accurately. Then you come to some other features, like imagine if you're doing some sort of content conversion, right? Like I own an invoice company. I've typed in pieces of text. Everyone has collaborated it. And now I want to export that invoice and send it over to my logistics team. So I need to export to PDF. So there comes engineers who need to understand the nuances of not only front end technology, but also what does it take to take a piece of HTML rich text and convert it into a PDF document, or take a piece of HTML rich text and convert it such that when I open it as a Word document or I can export to Word, it actually keeps the formatting, right? And so, all in all, to answer your questions, TinyMCE probably has over 100 plus features, each requiring its own nuances, its own specifications. And then all of these features need to be compatible, even though we're wrapping it around a thin wrapper around like Angular or React or Vue, they all need to be compatible with those frameworks as well. And then finally, we need to make sure that it's all highly optimized for performance, because at the end of the day, you don't want to load a rich text editor and then your whole website is slow. So there's a lot of like lazy loading and things like that that goes on in the background, and I can dig into that later. So it's a lot of work when you think about it as individual features and how big the project actually is.
Gotcha. So there are basically different skill sets among the engineering team, and I imagine that there's probably a structured software development life cycle, or am I wrong in terms of like before any release it needs to go through a performance check, and after the performance check there's the accessibility check, and is that like confidential information, or would you be would it be okay to share the order of that? Because I think that would be really interesting for the developers listening. Like, how do you order the quality control pipeline of your product to make sure that what is shipped at the end never gets degraded into any relevant metric?
Got it. So in terms of like our release schedule, just and I'm going to talk about it. There's nothing confidential. It is like every other software engineering team, right? Um, the our team has our own infrastructure that kind of maintains how TinyMCE works, the loads, and all of that behind the scenes. Then we have, of course, our individual frameworks, folks that work with the open source project who are constantly contributing to that as well. And then in terms of how it works is we have a lot of test environments and we have our own dedicated QA team. And they're an amazing team. Shout out to Shirdi, who kind of leads that team, based out of Australia. And what they do is they kind of do a round one of test coverage, right? They're making sure there's no breaking issues. There's nothing that changes like all your original functionalities. Then they have a list of bugs that they're fixing, right? So every release, they're also focusing on our own technical debt of were there any bugs? Are we kind of helping improve that? Then, of course, there's the new features. So there's new features, there's improvements, and then there's bug fixes that we focus on. And then, of course, there is quality assurance in terms of accessibility testing, as you mentioned. And we, if I looked at some of the past releases, I think I've typically seen them have around 99% to 100% test coverage. So it's a pretty great, well tested product. And that QA team, as I mentioned, does a great job of that release cycle every time. It's, of course, an agile team. So if you want to hear about like how are they managed, they work sprint to sprint. They have their own exit demos. They have a very agile functionality. If you want to ask me all the details about the engineering team, I haven't been an engineer at Tiny, so I can't tell you every single process of it. But from what I've seen, it's a typical, we have a sprint, we work on our feature releases, we work towards the thing, and then they actually have a code freeze at the end of that where QA comes in, tests all of these to make sure we have 100% test coverage. Accessibility is checking out, security compliance is checking out. In fact, I believe TinyMCE is SOC 2 compliant as well. So, we're very high, not only on the accessibility aspect, but also on the security aspect, because at the end of the day, this is content that people are typing that's personal to them. So there's a huge series of tests after your software development cycle that QA goes through, and then and only then do we sort of release.
Okay. Yeah, there's lots of complexity that from a first glance, I don't think people would think of all
No.
that is going on in the background. Yeah, definitely. And how much customizations can we get with the Tiny editor? Because I wouldn't want it to have just a general style. I would want to customize literally everything that I can to make it as close to my branding guidelines as humanly possible.
So so you're talking in terms of like CSS customization, right? Or features.
I was thinking more of like visual aspects, so CSS, sure.
Okay.
But I wasn't even thinking about customizing the features. Perhaps you could answer the CSS part of it first and then go into the features.
Yeah, of course. So in terms of, let me start with the CSS part of it, right? It's a JavaScript component, which means that you have access to the actual component itself, the HTML, and you can actually just edit the CSS to fit it according to your brand guidelines. As I said at the very beginning, one of the things that I said was if you've typed any piece of rich text on the internet, you've probably typed on TinyMCE and you didn't know it was TinyMCE. So, for example, if you've ever used SalesLoft or even as I mentioned, Shopify, when you're typing on it, it doesn't necessarily look like the demo TinyMCE rich text editor, but it definitely is a TinyMCE rich text editor, right? So I think at the end of the day, the answer is yes, you can customize it to how you want it to look and feel. We have a skin that we provide at the beginning. We also have the ability to go back to our old skins if you actually have a preference for those. But it's highly customizable. It's again just a component, and you can always edit how a component looks.
Okay, cool. And in terms of features, what is the level of customization that exists within that?
So I think the really interesting thing about TinyMCE is, even the core editor, it comes with probably 20, 30 plus features, right? If not even more. And you don't have to actually import all of those features. So if you, now talking sort of Angular and Tiny, if you there's like this initialization that you do with the Tiny editor when you're loading it into your Angular project. And in that initialization, you actually specify which plugins you want to bring into. So it only brings into your JavaScript the plugins that you ask it to load at runtime. So, for example, if I don't care about collaboration content, I just need a rich text editor that does basic font formatting, has some visual blocks, can import CSS, and has text patterns. I can specify I only want those 4 plugins, and I will have a very simple editor. So that's how simple it can get in terms of bringing in new features and functionalities.
Gotcha. And then the bundle sizes, I expect that is also going to reflect that, right? It's not going to load any code that it doesn't need.
Yeah, it doesn't load any code that it doesn't need. And even during, as I said, during runtime, it takes advantage of, most likely, I'm guessing if most of you are using TinyMCE or you're not just using it in Vanilla.js, you're using some of the frameworks, and it takes advantage of some of the performance optimization that specific frameworks provide. So, for example, Angular has lazy loading capabilities, and I TinyMCE takes full advantage of that.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Interesting. We are at 28 minutes already. Time is flying. I
Oh,
want to
wow.
make sure that I want to make sure that we really cover everything that you would consider to be really major.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna throw like a catch-all question to you, which is there anything that you deem as really important that we should talk about that I haven't touched yet?
Yeah, of course. So I have a few like product updates in terms of like Tiny. We recently, about a month ago, launched TinyMCE 7, which was very exciting. And some of the features that I highlighted over in this podcast, like document converters, revision history, markdown support, were all part of that release, as well as things that to look forward to in terms of 7.1. We do have some exciting things around like math equations coming up, as well as enhancement to our AI assistant. So think content editing is not exclusive to just typing a piece of text. Now you can just connect it to ChatGPT and ask prompts, and even ask ChatGPT to say, "Hey, generate an email template for me if you have TinyMCE in your email editor," rather than sort of having to write from the start. So it has a lot of content and a lot of features and functionalities, and we're just improving it every iteration of it.
Okay. Okay. That's really interesting. All right. So, Rina, I think we can start wrapping up. Um, there's a lot more stuff about this, especially in the docs. So if anyone is interested, definitely recommend going to the website and checking out the product firsthand. So I'm going to put a link to the website here in the comment section. But then again, it's just tiny.cloud for anyone that is listening, wants to check that out. Let's do some shameless promos. So Mrina, what would you like to mention? It could be stuff from Tiny, or it could just be personal for you. It could be things that you're working on. What would you like to promote?
Yeah, of course. Some shameless promos where Tiny is actually going to be at Front End Nation, which is a huge online conference. So I'm guessing a lot of you who are joining this podcast are actually, online listeners and engagers. So we're going to host a workshop on, building out this rich text editor that's going to include an AI assistant and almost give you this Notion-like feel. We're also going to be heavily giving out swag at Front End Nation. That's your thing. And we have a huge community there. So really excited to see you all there. And again, TinyMCE 7.1 is coming out soon with some newer and greater things with the AI assistant and other features. So just stay tuned for what we're doing with TinyMCE. Check out our Discord channel, our Twitter. We're pretty active on both, as well as some YouTube videos that we'll be launching.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So, my promo is just going to be the two companies sponsoring the show. So then again, if anyone wants to learn more about software development in general, Top End Devs has several podcasts, not just this one. So there are shows about React, about DevOps, about machine learning. So look up Top End Devs, and you're going to see that there are multiple different shows that might interest you. And again, if you're a company or just an individual wanting help to execute your idea, and you need good developers and designers, check out unvoid.com. It's UNVOID, so unvoid.com. And the difference between them and every other company that offers remote design and software development services is that by hiring Unvoid, you actually only pay after the work is delivered and approved. So it's not just a matter of them saying, hey, it's delivered, now you pay. No, you actually even have a step where you can do quality assurance and make sure that it is aligned with your expectations for the work before you approve. So they have all the incentives needed to actually deliver great quality work on time, because that is going to reflect on how much they get paid at the end of the month. So yeah, definitely check out those two companies if you feel that they ease any of the pains that you have in your life. But yeah, that's it. Again, thank you so much for sticking to the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Mrina, you are very welcome to go back anytime you want. I'm sure that there are other projects from Tiny that we haven't even touched upon. So if at any point you want to join the show again, and then we can discuss some of the other stuff that Tiny has available in their portfolio, then let's definitely do that. And again, thanks for being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucas. Have a wonderful day. And I hope everyone enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you. See you all next week.